Beaches, barbecues, and ball games, a simple guide to a healthy summer. For our agenda, we will talk about, throughout this talk, summer safety in general. So we're going to have sun safety, learn the best ways to protect yourself, food safety, cleaning, separating, cooking, and chilling food, the cookout diet, healthy summer food choices, and then eat this, how to make the really tough choices when it comes to summer cooking out and eating healthy. So, sun safety. Skin cancer is the most common of all cancers in the United States. It is caused by excessive UV ray exposure. Melanoma is a type of skin cancer that grows and spreads quickly. It causes the majority of skin cancer deaths. A person's risk for melanoma doubles when they have had 5 or more sunburns throughout their life. Skin cancer can be prevented, and in most cases it is treated and can be treated if detected early enough. So first we will talk about sun safety and prevention. We need to limit our UV ray exposure. There are many ways that we can go about doing this. So first we will talk about seeking shade. So to limit UV ray exposure, we can seek shade, whether that be under an umbrella at the beach or under a tree at a ball game. Staying out of the sun in the first place is the best way to prevent UV ray skin damage. The second option we have is to stay covered. So at some times we cannot avoid being outdoors, obviously. So if we can't avoid being outdoors, we need to wear lightweight clothing that covers our body if we're trying to avoid the UV exposure. Potentially lightweight long sleeves, maybe pants, maybe a hat, and obviously always sunglasses, which we will touch on later. Avoid tanning beds. Tanning beds emit UV rays, which is why their use increases the chance of melanoma and other types of skin cancer for everyone. And then the fourth thing is to use sunscreen, which is something that I'm sure everyone has heard many times, but it is extremely important to make sure that we use sunscreen when we are out in the sun. So, we will now touch on sunscreen. So, in general, sunscreen, how effective is it? It does not technically block all UV rays. So we know this, but sunscreen should not be considered the first line of defense either way, as it does not shield us from all UV rays. So we need to keep that in mind. It shouldn't be our first line of defense, although we should still have it on when we are out in the sun. What to look for when you're looking at sunscreen? We want to look for broad spectrum protection in sunscreen. This means that it protects you from both UVA and UVB rays. We want to look for a sunscreen that is an SPF 30 or higher. What does SPF mean? So SPF stands for Sun Protection Factor. It is a measure of how much UVB rays the sunscreen actually does filter out, and these rays are the rays that can cause sunburn. So an SPF 15 filters out 93% of UVB rays. SPF 30 filters out 97% of the rays. SPF 50 filters out 98%. And SPF 100 filters out 99% of those UVB rays. Note that the higher you go, the smaller the increase in UVB ray filtration. There is no evidence that SPF 15 and below actually protects against skin cancer or against skin damage. Manufacturers are required to actually include this on the warning label of these products, of all SPF 15 and below. So you want to try to get at least an SPF 30 or higher. You should not go more than 2 hours in the sun without reapplying sunscreen as well. Next up, early detection. So when it comes to skin cancer, we want to make sure that we can at least detect it early if it is there. So it's really important to do regular self-examinations. What does this mean? So there's very easy ways to make sure that nothing has changed on our bodies when it comes to moles and things like that. Some moles and skin spots are totally normal and can be completely harmless. A normal mole should be uniform in size, shape, and color. However, if a new mole shows up or an existing one appears to change in size, shape, or color, or if it just looks different from the other ones on your skin in general, you should have it looked at by a doctor. You want to use the ABCDE rule, and we will go over what that is in just a second. So, with early detection, when we are doing self-exams for our skin, we want to look at the ABCDE rule. A is asymmetry, B, border, C, color, D, diameter, and E, evolving. So, asymmetry, we want to make sure that it should be symmetrical on both sides. B, for borders, we want to make sure that the edges should be defined and should not be blurred or jagged. C, color, the color should be uniform and should be black, brown, or tan. Diameter should be smaller than 6 millimeters across. And evolving, it should not change in size, shape, or color. So we want to make sure that we use that rule and check all 5 of these things when we are looking at any moles on our body. Next up, vitamin D. So vitamin D is a huge field of research right now, and it is also a very essential nutrient for humans. The optimum levels of vitamin D have not yet been determined and require further studies, but it is being investigated. Sunscreen blocks vitamin D absorption, but you still need to wear it to protect yourself from skin cancer. You're better off wearing the sunscreen to protect yourself from skin cancer, even if it means that it blocks the vitamin D absorption. According to the American Cancer Society, it is best to get our vitamin D from food or from vitamin supplements, as these are not known to cause cancer as the sun is. Summer safety indoors. So now we're going to talk a lot about food and summer safety when it comes to cooking and grilling. So first we'll touch on cleaning. You always want to properly clean your surface when you're about to cook. So this means that using any type of utensils and kitchen tools, all of them should be washed, and make sure to wash your hands before, during, and after preparing any food. This will help to prevent the spread of germs and decrease the risk of contracting a foodborne illness. So when it comes to cleaning surfaces, we want to make sure that we use a sanitizer with a clean washcloth or paper towel to clean any kind of countertops or any kitchen surfaces. You can throw your washcloth in the dishwasher to eliminate germs and bacteria on it after you do clean, and then use hot soapy water for washing dishes between each use. When it comes to washing your hands, we want to do proper hand washing. So obviously we're going to wet hands, lather with soap, and then scrub for 20 seconds before you rinse and dry your hands. When it comes to hand sanitizer, we truly do want to try to wash with soap and water if possible. It is preferred, but if it is not possible and we are going to use hand sanitizer, we want to make sure that we're using a hand sanitizer that has 60% or higher alcohol content on the label. And that can be found on the label. So just make sure if you do choose to use hand sanitizer that it is 60% or higher alcohol content. Also, when it comes to cleaning, we're going to talk about washing produce. So, it is important to wash fruits and vegetables to prevent consuming any germs or bacteria from the outside. Clean produce with a brush, maybe just water and a brush is totally fine, but then also soap is actually not necessary. So a lot of people think that the idea of using soap or some type of produce wash of some sort are necessary, but it's actually not a good idea because it can lead you to consume chemicals. So you're better off just using water and a brush to clean your fruits and vegetables. Since 1990, there have been 36 recorded cases of listeria, which is a foodborne illness, and all 36 cases have been involved with cantaloupes. So the bottom line is a lot of people don't bother to clean any kind of fruits and vegetables if they have skin on them, for example, a cantaloupe, because they think that they're not eating that part, and that's the part that touches the outside. But once you cut into it with your knife can actually pick up bacteria from the outside of the fruit or vegetable if it's not washed off. And then you drag it with your knife, you drag the bacteria into the inside, which is where you would obviously eat. So it's important to wash all fruits and vegetables, even if they do have some type of skin on them. When it comes to washing meat and poultry, don't. That's another thing that a lot of people believe they need to do, is to potentially wash their meat and poultry, for example, chicken or something. It is not necessary. If you cook it properly, it will be totally fine, and it is not necessary to wash it. Even without knowing it, just by washing it in the sink, the juices can splash up and land on the kitchen surfaces or utensils, and then they will be contaminated with potentially harmful bacteria. So it's a good idea to just avoid washing meat and poultry altogether. Also beware of cross-contamination. So make sure that we always keep raw meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and seafood separate from other foods throughout the cooking process. Always thoroughly wash your hands and clean your cutting boards, knives, and other utensils with soapy hot water after handling raw meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and seafood. So the question is, where is the best place to store these types of foods? The answer, the bottom shelf. We want to make sure that we put these foods on the bottom shelf of the fridge to avoid any cross-contamination from any dripping. So it's a very good idea to put raw meat, fish, poultry, eggs on the bottom shelf. Another tip, keeping a designated cutting board in your kitchen for only raw meat, fish, poultry, eggs, and seafood. This can prevent you from confusing which surfaces have been used for them. So I'm sure most people have heard that there is a temperature danger zone with food. So we're just going to touch on that very quickly. When you are cooking, we want to keep food out of the temperature danger zone, which is 40 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. To make sure of this, buy a meat thermometer. The temperature danger zone is where bacteria can multiply the quickest. So between these temperatures of food, there is the most opportunity for foodborne illness, which we want to try to avoid. Also with cooking, we want to use a meat thermometer to ensure that your food is safe and ready to be removed from the heat. When you do use a meat thermometer, insert it into the thickest part of the food to check the internal temperature. Different foods must reach different temperatures in order to be sure all of the potentially harmful bacteria has been eliminated. So a good tip is to have a minimum cooking temperature chart handy. There's one here on the screen. And it may be helpful to have this hanging on your fridge or somewhere in your kitchen, maybe in a drawer, so that you can find it and use it when you are cooking any kind of meat. Next up for food safety is chilling. So there is also a temperature danger zone, obviously the same, 40 to 140, because that is when bacteria multiplies. So the tips are to refrigerate or freeze leftovers promptly, and specific foods you want to pay close attention to are anything with dairy, mayonnaise, wet moist foods, animal proteins, and starchy foods. Do not let perishables sit out for more than 2 hours at a time. And these examples can also, for the summertime, be potato or macaroni salad, coleslaw, baked beans, mashed potatoes, burgers, chicken. All of these foods that we typically grill, we want to make sure that they are never left sitting out for more than 2 hours at a time. Thawing. So when it comes to food safety and thawing, we never want to thaw foods out on the counter in a room temperature room, or in warm water for that matter. Many people know this, but they do not follow the rule. It's very important to do so because it's extremely risky to leave food sitting out on the countertop in room temperature. Foodborne illness can cause lifelong health implications, including brain and nerve damage, as well as kidney failure, and even lead to death. So we want to keep this in mind and make sure that we are thawing our foods properly. The proper thawing techniques can be, you can place frozen food in the refrigerator to thaw it for the next day. You can place food in an airtight plastic bag and submerge it in cold water. Change the water every 30 minutes, and you must cook it immediately after thawing with this technique. Or you can thaw it in the microwave, following your microwave's instructions in the manual, and then cooking immediately after as well. Thaw through cooking is honestly one of the best ways to go about it, just thawing it as you cook it. But this just takes a little bit more planning ahead, as this will double the normal cooking time if you do so. For food safety questions, the USDA has a virtual food safety representative named Karen. So she has an enormous knowledge of food safety in general and can answer any of your questions. In general, she is available online at askkaren.gov, Karen, askkaren.gov, and this can be helpful for any food safety questions that you may have. Next up, let's eat. So we are going to talk about cooking out and how we can be cautious of eating healthy during the summertime, which can be quite the challenge. So first we're going to touch on red meat. Animal studies have shown carcinogenic potential of HCAs and PAHs, but no studies have drawn a direct link in humans at this point. But in general, black char on grilled meats can lead to HSAs, and the bottom line here is that it can lead to toxins in the meat. And any type of meat that is infused with potentially the grill smoke, wood, or charcoal can lead to this. So although this is risky, and studies have found consumption of processed meats linked to the increased risk of colon cancer because of this, there's also the option to add antioxidant spices and herbs to your meat, such as rosemary, and then this can actually counteract the carcinogenic risk when you are grilling out and there is some charcoal on your meats. It's really a great option to try to use rosemary in a marinade or a rub before grilling, and then once you have that rosemary on there, it really can counteract the risk in barbecuing some types of processed meats. So when we are cooking out, we want to emphasize lean meats like chicken and turkey, and then potentially fish as well is always great. We want to have low and indirect heat for cooking. This can lead to less of the charcoal and on our meats. And then we want to opt for grass-fed and pasteurized meats when available. So why, we might ask? So less fat. In general, this is for grass versus grain-fed, and obviously we want to look for the grass-fed because it's less fat. Corn and grain feeding is widely known and used for fattening up cows, so that's why we want to avoid it. Rate of growth to slaughter weight is much faster for grain-fed cows than for grass-fed. Due to having less fat, grass-fed beef cooks much faster than grain-fed beef, which is always a positive as well. And steaks will benefit from being eaten slightly less cooked. More beta-carotene in the grass-fed as well, due to a higher intake of green grasses and plants, which are packed with these colorful nutrients. Safer, so the cows are healthier that eat the grass-fed. They are not exposed to certain types of E. coli that could potentially be exposed to those that are grain-fed. And they are also not given antibiotics. So this also decreases risk for us, and the cows as a whole are healthier from eating the grass-fed versus the grain-fed. The cows are honestly designed to eat grass, so that is also why it makes it healthier for them. And then it's also healthier for the environment to eat grass-fed because there's less carbon use, less toxic sewage runoff, and less antibiotics in the food supply. So we also want to emphasize the fact that we don't just have to focus on meat. When we are grilling out, we could grill up some vegetables on the grill, such as zucchini, yellow squash, corn, mushrooms, peppers, onions, maybe broccoli, asparagus, eggplant, kale, tomatoes, and cauliflower. These foods are all so good for us. We want to push eating them as much as possible. You should be getting multiple servings of vegetables a day, so this is a really great option to grill out and grill some vegetables as well. We also have the option of fruit, maybe for dessert. You could do peaches, maybe with some cinnamon on them or something along those lines. You have watermelon, strawberries, blueberries, pineapple, a lot of really great options. We don't want to forget our salads. So we have the option for side salads. We want to limit anything creamy. There are healthy options for example, potato salad. There are healthy potato salad recipes that aren't creamy but are still really great. So it's worth looking into something like that. Condiments just can be full of hidden sugars and are often packed with sodium. So this is something that we need to keep in mind when we are eating during the summertime and we're eating the creamy condiments like mayonnaise that are full of fat. We just need to stay aware and check the nutrition labels when buying and choosing condiments, because condiments will prevent you from over-consuming these excess calories if you choose the correct one. So for example, maybe you would choose the best option of stone ground mustard, and that condiment is going to have a lot less calories, sugar, sodium, fat, rather than ketchup, mayo, barbecue sauce, something along those lines. Those types of condiments have way more calories, sugar, sodium, and fat. Fortunately, there are the healthier alternatives, not only stone ground mustard, but maybe just do some fresh salsa, guacamole, hummus, yogurt sauces, etc. And like I said, it's not just barbecue season. Don't forget about all of the fruits and vegetables that are technically in season right now. For fruits, you have some strawberries, watermelon. We all know watermelon's way better in the summertime than in the winter. For vegetables, we have asparagus, cucumbers, tomatoes, corn. Obviously, corn is way more of a summer food, but all of these things are in season as well in the summer, so we don't want to just think about barbecue. And that is all for our talk. Again, remember that summer safety is extremely important. Remember your sunscreen. Remember to try to cover up when you are in the sun and to avoid tanning beds at all costs. Also remember that when grilling and even cooking indoors, food safety is extremely important because foodborne illness can be very dangerous. The last thing is to remember when grilling to try to make the healthy choice. It is possible. There are some really great summer foods that are healthy for us. So we want to just try to avoid the foods that are not as healthy when we have such great options like the fruits and vegetables that are in season, lean meats that you can definitely still grill, and it's just about making the healthy choice, which is definitely available. Have a great summer.